Right then, welcome back. Let's talk about, today, Revon. Last Card Revon. Oh, the things we could have gotten on this set. Team Dragon's Vanity. You know, Narakami getting Vanquisher. We've got Claret Sword returning to Shadows. So everyone's going, oh yeah, we're going to have our blue wave boy, Valios, returning to us right here, right now? No. They're like, nah, not yet. They can have Last Card Revon instead. So that's how we get around to this bad boy. So, Last Card Revon, what does it do? Well, first of all, let's look at its first effect. Once per turn you can rest one unit, and if you do, you can reduce your opponent's Vanguard's power by just 5k. Hard once per turn, but my god, such a powerful once per turn. So, when it attacks, if you have 5 or more rest rear guards, until the end of the turn this unit gets plus 15k and 1 drive. And of course, if your soul has a grade 3, you also get a critical. So, that's the basics. Now, let's move on to what to expect from this card and generally the support around it, because there's quite a bit to go over. So, his first skill, once again, we'll reiterate what it was. It's once per turn on Vanguard Square, rest one of your rear guards and your opponent's Vanguard loses minus 5k until the end of the turn. So, this results in either your opponent being on 5k or 4k if you go first and they're still on grade 2, or they're on 7k or 8k if they're grade 3. So this is a costless ability practically, considering when we get around to some of the rear guards that we're going to be speaking about that go along with Last Card Revon. It's a costless ability that's effectively more powerful than Bluestorm Dragon Maelstrom's plus 3k to the front row, by instead minusing your opponent, because you know, no matter what grade they're on, even a normal grade 1 unit with 8k power can still hit your opponent's Vanguard at that point in the game. So, similar to Maelstrom, the minus 5k to your opponent's Vanguard is very similar to Maelstrom's plus 3k to your own front row, but the difference being that it's actually a little bit stronger than Maelstrom, and that results in a lot of difference, allowing much smaller pokes to be able to hit an opponent's Vanguard. So it also allows you to dodge triggers if you play the game correctly. So you know, if you go first, you ride up to Revon, reduce your opponent's Vanguard by 5k. If they're Axel or Protect, they're on 4k base. If they're Force, they're on 5k base. So in the case of a 4k base, it's quite preferable, because in that scenario you are able to put your 9k rear guard on an Axel 2, for example, and then it can still hit even if your opponent hits the defensive trigger, which is often one of the bigger problems for this deck, as it doesn't have a lot in the way of power generation outside of Revon's own attack and the small power gains given by your rear guards. I mean, depending on your rear guards, there are certain ones that can actually gain large boosts in power. For example, the new Battle Siren Narissa, when she's rested, Soul Blast 1, we stand with 10k more, or other units like Coral Assault that we've already had for quite a while. So they can both be quite effective in generating that power that the deck needs to get over any defensive triggers and still put your opponent behind. So this ability is very similar to our new Chrono, I think it's Chrono Tiger Rebellion, in the way that he stops your opponent, you know, you reduce your opponent's guards by 5k, you know, for the rest of the turn if you've got 1 or less cards in hand. Of course, it's not quite the same because your opponent can still guard with 5k guards, but it's effectively very similar in the way that you're knocking off 5k off every single, you know, defensive boost your opponent uses, and that can result in very large scale, you know, things. Plus, Revon's general ability, generally attacking either last or near the end. You know, you have some units, such as the new Blue Wave units, that can restand after your Vanguard swings, but Revon by itself is already creating a very deadly pressure in the way that he will swing, even unboosted, for 27k, and he will get the triple drive, which of course is one of my favourite things in Vanguard. He's pretty much, you know, just a stride really, when you have 5 rested units, which is rather amusing to think about. I mean, he even gains a crit if you have a grade 3 in Soul, if your opponent's lived that long, of course, which is unlikely at this point. So I would suggest that Revon as a grade 3 is being quite strong as things go in terms of a final attack. So your opponent's going to have to drop generally a perfect guard, or at least quite a high amount of guard on that one swing, depending on what you do. And then if you have restanding blue waves, which I mentioned earlier, they can effectively restand, allowing you to stack any triggers on them and keep swinging. So you're pressuring your opponent quite hard with Revon. So, along with Revon, we also got some other units that support the playstyle. I'm going to talk about generally the ones that I think are actually good for Revon. So we've got Blue Wave Soldier Senior Varagios, Battle Siren Narissa, we've got Blue Wave Marine General Gallius, Marine General of Head Seas Thanasis, and generally, as well as Blue Wave Marine General Phoebos, the latter of which I do not find useful in the playstyle I've currently built. So let's talk about some of the useful grade 1s. We have Blue Wave Soldier Senior Varagios. He's very, very good. In general, he allows you to run a lower quantity of grade 3s and still get the efficiency and the repeated ride of grade 3, even without running more than just 4. So I generally quite like the design of this card, as many clans are getting it, where it's an on-play search top 5, add a card to hand and discard. If it's grade 3, well, of course you have to add a grade 3 to hand, but I'm finding him very useful in that regard. Each one of them also has conditions, so Varagios is one, being that the unit gains 5k if you have 4 or more rest rear guards during your turn, which is quite good for increasing your poke power. I think it's got quite good synergy with Revon, allowing you to run only 4 Revon in the deck, as I found is most effective, allowing to really hit the ride. I know that a lot of people like to run Fort Vessel Dragon, which is another grade 3, but I've found so far Fort Vessel has just not been as worthwhile running in terms of, I prefer the explosive power that Revon gives and the advantage that Revon gives, whereas Fort Vessel doesn't do much in particular in terms of giving advantage, and just sort of delays the state of the game from experience with using the card, while Revon gets you going and gets the pressure much stronger. Another good one would be Battle Siren Narissa. I found she's really quite nice to run, generally for the ability to draw cards and keep your sustainability up, and of course if she's rested either by Revon's effect or another unit's effect, you can just Soul Blast one, which you barely use in this deck, and stand her again and give her 10k power, which is huge when your opponent's sitting on 7 or 8k power or 4 or 5k power due to Revon's effect, and that can really impact a battle. So generally, as well as her effect to go into Soul and draw a card at the end of the turn, which is a good way to keep up resources, or it's very good for counterplaying that army, because I know the Vanquisher stuff really likes to bind but doesn't have much ability to hit back row or move units along. So if you leave Narissa on your front row and then put her into Soul at the end of the turn along with Coral Assaults, your opponent won't have many cards to bind. Well, yes, the new Vanquisher can bind from hand to gain its effects, but at the same time, at least you're not helping them to achieve their end game goals in that way. I mean, other cards we have are Agile Roll Dragon and Whipping Sailor. I don't find them too useful, as Agile Roll Dragon is just when it's rested. When it's a rest from your Vanguard attacks, you just get to give 5k to another unit in the same column. But in general, it's not worth running because it waits too long to give that 5k. Also, it's a counter blast, and while Revon itself doesn't have any resource costs like that, generally I prefer to save counter blast for other more important rearguard effects. With Whipping Sailor, while it seems fun, 2 in the front row, suddenly your opponent can't attack your front row at all, or they can't attack your front row. But it's not worthwhile running because it's very niche, and generally if you've got these in your front row, you're not going to be hitting for as much, and that's generally not what you want. As for Blue Wave Shield General Yorgos, You know, when your Vanguard is attacked, if you have 4 more rested rear guards, you may move this unit to guard circle. Generally, I haven't found him useful to run. He gains no shield value when being moved to guard circle. Generally, if your opponent just say takes out 1 or 2 of your rear guards first, generally that will actually lower the number of rested rear guards that you have. So if you're against something like Kagero Narukami that combine things, or if you yourself are putting units into your soul via the effect of things like Nerissa and Coral Assault, you are going to find yourself very quickly losing the ability to activate Yorgos' effector shield from back row or front row. Okay, so more in-depth look at the grade 2s. So we'll start off with Blue Wave Marine General Gallius. You know, he's got continuous ability, he's getting 5k, and as long as you have 4 or more rested rear guards during your turn, includes himself of course, that's you know, decent enough. It can raise your values, your attack power just a bit above, you know, the necessary amount. Also, he has the ability when your Vanguard that's grade 3 attacks, if your opponent's current power is different from its original power, so if they've been hit by Revon, if they've hit a trigger, any of these things, you can counterblast 1 and stand himself. He's generally one of your main pieces, as he allows Revon's attack to, you know, not just be a PG and, you know, end turn, as he allows you to cycle any triggers that you would get on Revon if your opponent tries to guard it, and place them on him instead, allowing you to keep the pressure up. You know, also allows you for extra attacks in a turn, which is always great. Of course, usually getting his 5k boost as well, so on an Axel circle he might be hitting 19 or even higher than that, depending on situations. So 24 on an Axel 1, 19 on an Axel 2, and that can be really powerful. So along with him, I find that there's also Blue Wave Marine General Foivos, although I don't like using him, as I feel like his ability is a bit too niche. And I don't like the fact that you have to discard a card to stand him, as he is, when placed, if your Vanguard is last card Revon, you can Soul Blast 1 and rest himself and look at the top card of your deck and call it to rear guard. So while this is useful for generating a field, generally I haven't come into a situation where my field or hand have been so depleted by the point I am on last card Revon that I have to call extra units. Plus, you call the one at the top, not the top 3 or top 5, just the top one. So it could be a trigger, a grade 3, you might already have a full field at this point. It's also only on place. If it was once per turn, I might consider it more, because while Soul Blasting isn't particularly, you know, troublesome, and resting himself, it's just not. It's not very efficient, and it doesn't always get you what you want a lot of the time. So also his other effect is, of course, once per turn, when your grade 3 Vanguard attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard's current power is different from its original power, again with the Revon's effect or a trigger effect, you can discard a card to stand himself, and I don't find the discard cost very helpful with the deck. So generally you can run him, but I wouldn't run him at a very high number personally. I also quite like running Marine General of Headseas Thanasis currently, as his ability is rather simple. You know, act once per turn on Vanguard or rear guard, cost rest 1 of your rear guards, and it gains 5k and he gains 5k power. I think it's he. But I find he's quite useful, especially when ran with, you know, a large quantity of Battle Siren Nerissa, as he can generate early game numbers quite high. If you're using Algos, it becomes a 14k beat stick that you can restand of Algos, even without something like Penguin Soldier to, you know, permanently boost him, and that could be quite effective, you know, for swinging at your opponent. In general, that is the general gist of the grade 2s that we have available with Revon that have any sort of basis on him. And finally, let's look at some of the grade 3s that we get with Revon, though I don't recommend running them, as I said before, I find Revon's best run as the only grade 3 in your deck, using Baragios to gain consistency and stay consistent, along with all the draw power you gain from Coral Assault and Nerissa, allowing you to effectively hit those high draw and high cycling of hand, and generally always achieve your grade 3 ride in most games about as consistency as the deck that may run 8. So we've got Fort Vessel Dragon, when placed, Counterblast 1 on Vanguard of course. When placed on Vanguard, Counterblast 1 and your opponent's Vanguard gets minus 5k until the end of turn, so it's very similar to Revon, except it takes up a resource of a Counterblast. and he then also has a rearguard skill of gaining 5k and cannot be retired by an opponent's effect as long as your Vanguard is last card Revon and you have 4 more rested rearguards. Generally, I don't find him very useful, as I feel he's clunky and cloggy, and generally he doesn't fulfill as much purpose as you want a lot of grade 1s and 2s in this deck. And Revon effectively just performs better. Revon gets you the resources with his triple drive. He also creates pressure with his plus 15k and even a crit at times. Whereas this card is just a basic twin drive. I mean, he has a gift, which isn't the worst thing. But in general, I find that he's a very slow option, and you want to speed things through with Revon in general. Along with the next one as well, Sharp Split Dragon. When it attacks the Vanguard, you can rest 2 rear guards, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and retire it. And while choice to retire is quite good, the cost of resting 2 rear guards is quite expensive. And I know even though potentially you could rest, say 2 Battle Siren Narissas to activate his effect, which would stand both of them again, and they're both getting 10k, which would be great in theory. You're not always going to have those 2 on the field. You can also rest other units like Galileus, but currently retiring rearguards is generally not that effective at the moment. It doesn't gain any power. It does have the Axel Circle and Ride, but I'm finding that it's not worth the utility that the card presents at the current moment. Maybe another clan will come along that really needs to have keep a certain unit on board, and then he'll become useful to run. But unless that clan's dominating the rest of the meta, it's very unlikely to really cause you trouble that you'd need to run Sharp Split Dragon, which is sort of sad because I really like the art of Sharp Split, but in general I'd say he doesn't really, he has too high a cost for the ability that he gets. So in general I'm finding that Revon has a good resource generation and a good consistency level compared to Maelstrom, which is more swing hard, swing big, and swing fast. While Revon can still do your grade 2 rush turn, it might be less effective as you run a lower count of certain units like Tidal Assault, but it can still do that rush. I would say that it's actually got quite a good matchup with the new Narukami. I've had quite a lot of success against it, and success against the new Gears stuff as well, though we haven't seen all of it. My friend loves to run it over at Team Burst. His name's Shark, so please, if you feel like watching those, go for it. I'm sure he's done lots of videos on that as well. Overall, I'd say that it's a differing playstyle from Maelstrom, but throwing everything on the board for Revon is quite a lot of fun in some regards, quite spooky if your opponent's grade 2. And still spooky if your opponent's grade 3, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. So overall I'd say Revon is quite good. It has decent swing power, very killer turns if you're not careful. Your opponent can be in really big trouble with that triple drive if they can't guard it early on in the game. It also lets you rebuild your hand every turn. The triple drive plus other effects that opponents soul and draw. I'd recommend a deck list. I'll put it up this screen now. This is the current deck list that I've been testing and I've been finding quite effective. Currently actually been proved a bit wrong, really. I thought that this deck was going to be a lot weaker than Maelstrom, but through some testing I found that it can actually keep up good pace with Maelstrom, so I'm still working on an optimum Maelstrom build with the new units that we have been given. But overall I would say Revon has been a lot of fun. It's very pressure heavy, which I love my pressure. The whole video on pressure. And yeah, I'm looking forward to playing this in the future when the card's finally released. Currently using CardFight Vanguard to play test them, but in general, I've got a lot of hopes for Revon. I may be taking it to Springfest later this year, I'm not sure, we'll find out. More testing needs to be done, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and some of the ideas. I hope I've given you some ideas for how to use Revon, and maybe want to explore it a bit. So I will be seeing you in the next video. Hopefully I'm going to be talking about some of the new things, such as the new effectively spell cards for the game, and the shield token that we're going to be receiving, and how it could impact the state of the game as both discard fodder and effectively a potential change to the going second within Vanguard. So thank you very much for watching. See you next time.